Welcome back to the broadcast. This is Inside Politics. Now, just how much do politicians spend to mount a serious campaign during elections in Kenya? And does a well-oiled campaign assure one of a win in an election in Kenya? A survey conducted by political experts shows that some potential contenders are being kept away due to the huge monies involved in campaigns. A survey conducted by Professor Karoti Kanyinga of the University of Nairobi and governance consultant Tom Boyer, dubbed Cost of Politics in Kenya, found out that the more one spends, the more likely they are to be elected. And as our Fred Kagonya now tells us, this means that the cost of contesting in the 2022 polls is likely to be higher this time.
If you're planning to contest the Senate in 2022, the average amount you should have in hand is 39 million shillings. If you're looking to become a member of parliament, then you need to set aside at least 22 million shillings. For women representatives, you will need a war chest of 24 million shillings. And members of county assembly will need at least 3 million shillings. 7 out of 10 politicians who responded to the study by Professor Karoti Kanyinga and Tom Boyer indicated that they would spend more in the forthcoming elections.
How much does it then cost for us to engage in politics? How much does it cost to have good men and women represent people's views and ideas in the National Assembly, in Parliament in particular?
What we know now is that we have very clear figures in terms of how much people are spending at the party primaries level, how much they're spending at the general election level, and also how much people are having to spend while in office.
The trend is rising, not just in Kenya, but across Africa. Experts warn that it may negatively impact the quality of leaders who win elections.
But what we are looking at is really, how expensive is our own democracy in relation to other economic indicators in the country.
Running a campaign has become a business and it's very expensive. You don't make returns to your investment that easily.
According to the report, politicians spend more in party primaries than in actual campaigns. This is because of the influence parties have on constituents. But money and party membership are not the only dynamics that influence one's political success. Gender also plays a big part.
The fact that actually women are spending almost the same amount as men, or in many cases with regards to the National Assembly seat and the County Assembly seat, they're actually spending more than men, but they're not getting elected. And so what does this tell us? This is a pointer, I think, to the patriarchal nature of our society.
We need to have a national conversation on these expenses that we have in politics, and probably have a conversation that will lead to people saying that we need campaign financing laws to be put in place and to be effectively implemented.
The study that surveyed 300 aspirants comes at a time when IEBC is pushing amendments to the Elections Campaign Financing Act that aims to cap campaign expenditure for the various elective seats. The IEBC is supposed to issue regulations to guide campaign financing a year to the elections. In 2016, the Isaac Hassan-led IEBC had proposed to cap the campaign expenditure for the president at 5.2 billion shillings. The spending ceiling for aspiring governors, senators and women representatives was put at 433 million shillings, MPs at 33 million shillings and MCAs at 10 million shillings. Fred Kagonye, KTN News.
All right, let's talk about something that comes into sharp focus every time an election is just around the corner, and we are barely 13 months to the 2022 election that has been touted to be the most expensive yet in Kenya's history for obvious reasons. Let me begin with you, Mark Bichache. You had thrown some shade about who can afford an election campaign. Bring us into perspective into what you were trying to say about what it takes to run a presidential campaign, especially.
Well, Ben, I happen to have run various campaigns, not just in Kenya, but across Africa, and I know what it takes for someone to run for the presidency. Now, the report that you've just talked about in your piece makes this very clear, because it says that, number one, in the majority of cases in this country, the person who won any election, be it senatorial or even MCA, is the one who spent the most. Now, if you were today to play the clips between Jubilee and NASA and just look at the crowds, how many of them had red and yellow versus the NASA blue, you'd notice that either the NASA printers had run out of ink, or NASA had run out of money. And you remember Kalonzo Musyoka holding up a pay bill number.
Okay, let me interrupt you. There's a problem with your microphone.
Oh, okay.
We'll try to fix that. But Roslyn, we have talked about the Election Campaign Financing Act that is set to take effect before the next general election. What is that likely to achieve given circumstances in Kenya today?
Actually, Ben, if the Campaign Financing Act is implemented, which IBC is still waiting for Parliament to approve, because they had sent the regulations for Parliament to approve. Remember, they postponed the same after the Isaac Hassan led team proposed the same in 2016. Now, what it's supposed to do is to regulate how much an individual can actually spend in an election. And if you look at that law, it actually talks about a committee that is set up. So the committee can actually be led by the candidate running, or the candidate appoints somebody. So that committee is supposed to make public all the finances that they are getting, where they are getting the finances, and even during that time, they're even supposed to block candidates from even participating in Harambes, because if you remember, our laws bars voter bribery and all that. So once we are headed to the elections, any incentive you do is looked at in terms of initiating and trying to induce the voters to vote for you. So if you look at the way this campaign financing committee will be set up, you are supposed to declare anything in kind, or if it is your finances from your money, the source must actually be known, that this is a source from where I'm deriving this money.
And there's a cap, right?
And there is a cap. The reason is, if you look at what is happening currently, you find that people are spending, and I'll give you an example of candidates who are running in northeastern region. You find that for a parliamentary seat, a candidate will spend around even 300 million. Now, if you calculate this for the 5 years that this candidate is going to be in parliament, I don't think the salary or even the sitting allowance can accrue to that money that they have spent in that election. So now this is why now when people come in, we don't get the right people, because I actually bought this seat. So why should I serve the people? Because I bought it. So I think this campaign financing will instill some discipline in terms of the expenditure, and also allow people who have been blocked in the past from participating in elections because they cannot afford. Now, if you go to the US elections, and you saw even the time of Obama, you remember the call-ins they had, the receiving the funds, and it is capped so that when you receive money, I can only send $1, $10, $100, and I have to explain why. So there is that cap that your campaign cannot actually hit this amount of money. I know when Trump was running and Hillary, they surpassed that. But there is that cap because you owe it to the people. The money is coming from the people, and therefore you have to give services to the people. But the case of Kenya, we have actually been spending the money, and that's why we've been having, when we have people who have been taken to court for corruption and all that, we talk about that money they stole, let them bring it back to us so that we can eat it, because we glorify people who dish money, but we don't want to know where that money is coming from. For this law, will actually instill that.
All right. KITILI, do you think it can work, that election campaign financing act? Because even like Roslyn says, even in the US, they have a problem with it, because you find big business interests hiding their monies in contributions to what are called political action pacts. So they expect whoever gets into election, they will take care of their interests. But we are talking about the Election Financing Act, but also we're seeing politicians looking for money now, all sorts of things. We have been told, pundits have said that the likes of UDA, when they're doing this, they're registering people in the diaspora. They would expect those people to invest in terms of contributions and all that. What do you think will happen in terms of, do you think this can be capped?
I think that it is good we have this proposal so that there is law capping the maximum, a candidate can spend. It may not work fully, Ben, but it has been tried in countries like India, where if you overspend, automatically you will be disqualified, and no discussion about it. It is very difficult to implement it in Kenya, especially in the mashinani. And I don't think those figures are realistic. When you say an MCA in my ward to spend 10 million, that is, it's hardly 2 million. I think that the Parliament, when they discuss this bill, must distinguish between the capital city and urban centers and the mashinani. Mashinani, people are spending quite less. Number two, I think this is going to make it very difficult for the contenders, especially who don't have money, because you see, what we are going to ask them is, the Act says you should spend 10 million, and we have not seen you spending 10 million. So, because it's not going to be twisted, this is Kenya. So, I think it is good there is the law, and I think it is good we discuss and debate about it. But we cannot go ahead without it.
All right.
So, whether it will be fully implemented, this can take time, but it's good law. Ben, before you take the mic again, where is the source of money? The law provides for source of money to be contributions from members, to be, the fund, government fund that, the political parties are given, and any other lawful source. The problem, and we shall discuss probably about the arresting of the Nyeri, politician, if your accounts are suspected that they are siphoning government money or public money, and this is in abuse of the Public Finance Act, it is important we investigate and inquire into where is your money coming from. So if you're finding people, they would be in all churches, in all mosques, in all schools, contributing huge money because of the campaigns coming in 2022, it's only fair we ask.
Right.
We may not say you have stolen it, but it's only fair we ask, did people contribute? Did you get it from the political parties fund?
Right.
Or who gave you the money? So it is a good law, by all means, so because it will at least streamline politics and democracy.
In principle,
yes.
Is it wrong? Mark says you need billions, tens of billions probably to win a presidential election in Kenya.
Yes.
Is it wrong in principle to have people, whatever interest they have, contribute billions to
Never, never. But it's important we know who are those people. Because that's now how you stop corruption. And that's how you make the playing field to be equal, to be leveled, fair to everyone. Because a honest leader wants to come up, and he has only 2 million, and he wants to be a leader, and he's very honest, he wants to serve people. But because you have a cartel of corrupt men and women around you, you have collected 50 billion. Now, you literally suffocate the man with 2 million. So we have to make it a level ground for every person who is interested to lead.
All right. Yes. Before I come to you, Mark, to finish your initial plan, KITILI, what is your take on this?
I must differ with my learned friend and my good friend Roslyn that financing law, election financing law, will be useful. It will not be useful in any event. Ben, we have what sociological jurisprudence calls law in books and law in action. What Rose and Wakil are telling us is law in books. Law in action, this act will not work in the following way. You're capping my expenditure at, say, 10 million. Tomorrow, I'll be invited in a village called Bumini by a person called Dan Chibata for the memorial service of their father. Then I tell Dan, I am giving this 2 million as my Sadaka contribution for this memorial. They'll argue that this was not actually part of bribing. This was actually part of the process of giving back to the church for having had a memorial service. How are we going to cap people's expenditure? How are we going to monitor those who are going to William Ruto's home for a cup of tea? They are Kenyans. He loves visitors. They can go and have a cup of tea, and they are refunded their fare. And he will say, this is not bribery. What we must do as a nation is not to focus too much on the law to solve our problems. We can focus on improving the value system, on improving the people's integrity, and closing the taps that give these people money to bribe the voters. If you take CDF out of a member of parliament's programs, for instance, where will they get the kickbacks they get from contracts? If you seal all loopholes through which money is lost, public money, where will these people get money to bribe voters?
Right.
We need to professionalize our politics and ensure that politics is not left in the hands of a few billionaires, a few millionaires, in the words of J.M. Kariuki, as against the 10 million beggars that we had that time.
I think, Ben, what we need to clarify here is this. We have the law and we have the regulations to implement those laws. So let us wait for what IBC will present, the regulations, so that we can say, in terms of the regulations that are proposed, it will be very impossible to implement this. But at the end of the day, we cannot say something is impossible when we have not tried it. We know our leaders are mysterious and cheeky, But because of that, again, we have to defend that El Molo who doesn't have a single cent but wants to contest, because if we still open the market for everybody, look at governors. Everybody talking about governors are talking about millions. How many Kenyans can actually put down millions in campaign? So we are actually leaving the elective seats for the thieves who can actually amass money.
What about, it's a question I'll direct it to, she says that in terms of the person who has nothing but is a leader, wants to participate in this democratic process. Is there a case for even just the logistics of running, because you need to pay people, you need to have agents in all polling stations if you want to, really tally the vote nicely, like we saw UDA do in Kiambaa. Is there a case for just, we need money, like practically, to run these things?
Ben, and let me reiterate this. I have worked in presidential campaigns in many countries across Africa. And the one thing that is clear is that campaigning and running a presidential election is expensive. Same to being an MCA, same to being a senator. It is an expensive affair. The question, Ben, is not whether it will be expensive. The question is, where do the funds come from? Now, the big difference between Kenya and most other countries is the electorate is an election day political active animal. We participate in Kenyan politics once in 5 years. We do not fund our political parties, and we do not fund candidates we believe in. Therefore, the opposite flow becomes a reality, where Kenyans have an expectation of the candidate to spend money on them. It is this expectation, Ben, that if it does not change, even if you are in Kieleweke or Tangatanga, the dream of hustlers will never be. There is no Mama Mboga with her 5 bob that she collected today who is ever going to be an MCA based on the amounts of money required even to get a nomination certificate from the list of parties, including Tip-Tip. There is no way.
All right.
The solution then is not in the letter of the law. The solution is for Kenyans to put their money where their mouth often is. The Kenyans who are usually saying they want change, they want revolution, if you're not willing to give 5 shillings to the candidate you believe in, please shut up. There is no revolution. The only revolution that will happen is in your stomach when your food is turning. The rest of the time, there is no revolution, because if you look at any country worth its salt where anything has changed, then we would have seen that when Kalonzo Musyoka held up a pay bill number, it should not have been the joke it was in 2017. Okay. Instead, the people should have rallied to support their leaders. But for as long as you try and say that you want to do bottom up, you want things to change, but the bottom never contributes to the top, I am telling you it's going to be a lie.
Mark Bichachi is saying hustlers can only support.
No, hustlers can only vote. Because, listen, if our political parties are still funded, listen, Mudavadi funds ANC. Uhuru funds Jubilee. ODM is funded by Raila, topped up by the funds, the political party funds. At the end of the day, the reason why these parties are briefcase parties is if today Mark Bichachi wants to lead a political party, I must first go to my bank account and check whether I have a comparative amount of money, right, so that when men in black show up, I also have men in grey who can compare in strength.
Okay. Tell me this, Ishmael. Does this kind of obscene monies running around in our political processes affect the quality of leaders that we have? Does it?
100%. 100%. Because we have seen where people actually who cannot lead, apart from the fact that they are sitting at the high table and probably connected to the president or the Raila Odinga or, like that, they cannot lead. I mean, when you look at them, whether you talk about, and I'm not trying to be intrusive, but you talk about their families or where they have been, where they are working, they are not leaders by nature. They are just people, who are taking advantage of the fact that, like now, Uhuru wants to, pick somebody to be the next president. And then they will all go and they say now they want to become president. So I think if we divorce that element of money from the individuals, we will start seeing exactly who is the correct leader. And that's why we are saying, my brother Chesa mentioned it's very difficult to exactly know or to exactly control what is being spent by a leader. This is not correct. The funds are related to the elections period. It's not about what you do, you know, what you've done 3-4 years back. Yeah. It is financial discipline during the election period, so that we are sure how many T-shirts you have bought, how many members you have, out of these members, how many have contributed. That is there in books. How much has come from the political fund. That is there in books. Then you are supposed to declare that we have also received the following from diaspora, you know, M-Pesa and Wave and whatever, and the bank, you know, you are supposed to declare. Once you have declared, we're able to see you actually have 3 billion. We will judge you in accordance with how you have spent the 3 billion Ben, out of the 5 billion, which you are supposed to have.
Ben, and I want to defend Wakili here. You tell me, these people who have money from, some of them it's from selling chicken, others they say it's from Disco Matanga, that they've collected billions. Now you honestly expect that they are going to declare of their own free will.
Ben, listen.
That this, I held 13 Disco Matangas during Moi's age.
Let me just help you. Let me help you.
Right,
I understand where you're coming
from.
It was my point. It is not the Disco Matanga patrons who are declaring, Ben. This is UDA.
The campaign committee.
The UDA is the one which will say, we have received from donations this much money. And then they will say also from the diaspora, we have this much money. And also from corporates who are our, you know, funds, we have collected this much money. Okay. And me, as the presidential, you know, contender, I am giving 1 billion.
As the Disco Matanga.
So once, it's okay, they have to declare the source. Indeed, that's the law, by the way.
All right.
Once they have said this is what we got from here and from here and from here, and of course they can lie, that's not an issue, then we will start judging them. Have they spent the 3 billion they declared, or they spent 5 billion? That's where the issue is. It's not about who really...
Wakili, why I'm differing with you, Zundi, is what you are telling us are very good points, but on paper. You can sit here alone and imagine that so and so for Ambassador has given you this money, Wakili Nyaribo has given you this money, and come up with a very good paperwork and present to IEBC and comply with the regulations. But then what happens on the ground? My question is, during the electioneering period, how are you going to differentiate my personal financial behavior from my political financial behavior in compliance with IEBC? I'll print T-shirts as agreed on the paper, I'll fuel cars as agreed on the paper, but then I'll meet a group of people in my village, people I'll purport to be my relatives who've just come to visit. And because I was naturally born a generous man, I'll give them some fare. How will you then hang me and say you've bribed voters? It is not possible.
In fact, let's pick it up here. We forget that Kenyan politics is rife with bad behavior. Let's take an example. How many MPs today run without goons? So how will they declare how they fund their goons? Number two, we know that there is voter bribery. On election day, forget about this nice one for refunding transport. This one where you unapita na your mark for voting and you're given 500 bob. That one, how are they going to declare?
The one where 2 million is found in your car.
Exactly, where 2 million
at a polling station.
At a polling station, and it was your sitting allowance for passing by. You know, those kind of issues. And you see, the problem with campaign financing is this. And if you want to solve it, the solution is only one. The solution is when the people stop receiving money and they start supporting candidates and ideas they believe in. Because then the people will hold those leaders to account. You can write all the best laws that you want on earth, but for as long as the people who are involved in the voting are recipients of cash, there is no law that will ever work.
Ben, I think we are losing this thing.
Not even the sword.
No, look at the campaign finance. It's just like the CDF Act, where the counties are required to have a CDF committee that is actually approved in Parliament. With this one, you also need to have a committee in place that will give a return, a feedback of how much that campaign team received. We've not had it. When a person declares, you don't even know who are in the campaign team. So the truth is, with this, we can be able to look. If I'm supporting ODM and ODM declares that we got 5 billion, we need to expect, if it comes to a time that we'll say during elections, ODM did not even have agents, then we will ask the 5 billion that you received, that you had put aside for your campaigns, how was it spent? We see audit reports coming to Parliament with the money political parties have spent. Have we always audited those reports and say that Jubilee has spent this amount of money on rent, the Jubilee has spent this amount of money on their recurrent? We don't do that. We're just flying figures. We need to audit these things and then now say it cannot work based on what we have done in the past years. These political parties have not been spending money the way they are supposed to spend, or they are hiding money.
We need to go for, yes, 30 seconds only.
My brother Echesa, Bichachi, and the rest of us and all of you always file the monthly VAT, I think, returns to the KRA, isn't it?
Yes.
There is no policeman standing next to you, and you file nil returns. Or you file that I have received 10,000 this month, isn't it? It is hoped that the corresponding customer will also fill in and say, yes, I have received from Mr. Echesa an invoice for 100,000.
Yes.
There is no police. If you say that it is impossible for citizens probably to pay tax because they are alone when they are doing it, this, there is what is the law, and there is what is practically happening. Right. We are not disputing that. But it's a starting point, Mr. Bichachi, to have a law that stipulates that you must declare. You declare wrongly, but we will catch up with you.
Let me tell you,
we really need to
catch up with them.
He's
And we always get them. We always get them.
Who, when they are asked to have degrees, mysteriously go to India.
Isn't it a place to start, though?
We should start with the Bichachi and see if his returns are okay.
Returns are fine.
All right.
We can get paupers as candidates. We can solve these issues.
Okay, all right.
So long as rich men are
contesting. We are trying to set an agenda for what will be happening. Of course, the IEBC will be coming up with this election financing act. Shall be discussing it then to see what they have and if those proposals of those laws and regulations are practical. Let's take another quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we shall be getting out of politics and talk about government wars in government. That is between the executive and judiciary. This following the arrests of High Court judges, Justice Said Chitembwe and Agri Muchalule last week on allegations of corruption and what a can of worms this has again brought to the fore. Don't go too far.